Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Monday. This is Kevin McPherson, and it's HogvilleNET YouTube Live. It's going to be a busy week. I look at this as probably the busiest week when you talk about Razorbacks that played on this past season that just ended in March. When you look at the coaching staff and what's up ahead this week for the coaching staff, probably the busiest week so far in the offseason, just in terms of events going on and folks out on the road attending events, evaluating those kind of things, participating. It's a really busy week. And so when you start thinking about the offseason and, the roster's mostly constructed, still some question marks about that. You're looking ahead to future recruiting, all of that, all of these things will kind of be connected together when you look at the landscape of where the staff will be and where some of the hogs will be. And certainly a guy like Carter Knox, who you're hopeful will come back and be back for his sophomore season in 2025 26, taking part in the NBA Draft Combine that is now underway. So we're going to hit on several things and just kind of go through what the week looks like. It's going to be a busy one, including for me. I'll be on the road in Oklahoma City tomorrow and then Memphis over the weekend. That's the plan anyway, as we look around the landscape here. So let's get started. What's up with the Florida State wing? Yeah, Jameer Watkins, he's in the combine. He's at the combine. So, we're keeping an eye on everything for you here at hogville.net. Let's start with today. The combine officially, you saw the rosters announced and released for the 5-on-5. I thought it was very interesting. We saw Boogie Fland and Carter Knox both listed on separate teams. There are four teams that are put together with rosters announced. Adu Thero was not listed. So the first takeaway is Adu Thero, who had a knee injury late in the regular season, we know that, came back after missing the last four games of the regular season, the SEC tournament, and the first two rounds of the NCAA tournament. Came back and played about 5 minutes in the Sweet 16 game against Texas Tech, first half minutes. And really, so we didn't see a whole lot of him at the end of the year. He is going through the combine process, but he is not part of the roster of any of the four rosters that were announced. And again, Boogie Fland, Carter Knox they're playing on separate teams, potentially then going to compete against each other. Competition for that begins on Wednesday. I'm certain that measurables and agility testing and those kind of things, shooting drills, all that will be also taking place as a lead up to the 5-on-5 scrimmaging. Two of the NBA scouts who I reference anonymously, who are sources of mine, are both already there. Both of them have checked in with me. They're in Chicago for the combine. They're going to be giving me updates on the Pro Hogs, in addition to stuff that you'll see on social media from like Jonathan Giavoni, ESPN Draft Express, Jonathan Wasserman, Bleacher Report. You'll have various outlets putting out stuff that you'll be able to see on social media, but I'll have my behind the scenes sources, NBA scouts, that'll also be feeding me information. So we'll see how well some of this information lines up through the course of the week. But I find it interesting. I look on Boogie Fland's team and the roster that was released, the only point guard on his roster. That's kind of interesting because there are several players that he'll be teaming up with that he competed against this season. Some from the SEC, RJ Lewis, for example, with St. John's. Darion Williams is on Boogie Fland's team, the Arkansas killer in that Sweet 16 game for Texas Tech. There's, I think, a couple of SEC players that on that list. And remember, Boogie only played 5 SEC games, so I'm not sure that he didn't compete against Jalen Moore with OU. He was already out by then. But it's a pretty good squad when you look at some of those players. Yaxel Lindenborg is also the Michigan commit. Also, we know he's got first round projections. The arguably the top player in the portal. If he decides to come back to college, he may end up being the number one ranked guy when the dust settles. Also on Boogie's team, when you look at Carter Knox's team, there are a bunch of shot takers, including Jameer Watkins, 6'7" out of Florida State's what somebody's asked about. He's on that squad along with Carter Knox. You've got PJ Haggerty, the shooting guard, the second team All-American, the gunner out of Memphis. You have Marcus Sears, Alabama lead guard, who he's more of a scoring lead guard than he is a facilitator. I guess, if you want to, look at it from that standpoint, but a lot of shot takers on Carter Knox's team. So that's very interesting because, when you look at Knox and his arc as a freshman, he got to a point where he wasn't chasing shots. He was very selective, figured out where his spots were, got into his drive game, really maximized his strengths, and sort of played away from what his weaknesses might be, and became an efficient shooter on not great volume. He just didn't take a whole lot of volume of shots. And looking at the group that he's playing with, he may not be at the top of the pecking order on guys that are going to get shots. So that's kind of interesting because you wonder, what does he really need to show? He's the one guy, Carter Knox. Now, we haven't seen measurables yet, but when they did put this list out, they put positions. Again, Boogie Fland. Well, I'm already getting some feedback from an NBA scout coming onto my notifications while I'm doing this. So it came on and went off too fast to see what it said. We'll just have to pick back up with that later this week and share what we got. But Boogie Fland listed as a point guard. Well, we know that's his position. They've got Carter Knox listed as a small forward. Nothing shattering about that. Two guard, small forward, 2 or 3 at the NBA is probably about right. Can he defend 1 through 3? If he can prove that he's, versatile defensively, and a guy that's going to take good shots and be maybe a 3-and-D type of guy, you project him as one of those, coveted 3-and-D wings potentially. Does it take him another year of college to really establish himself in a draft position that he wants to be in? Can he do enough with his combine performance measurements testing, the interviews, the shooting drills? I mean, this is what we're all going to find out. Is there enough to move the needle for him? Remember, there will also be invites for these players to have individual workouts with teams. The scouting, the various agencies that represent players will have their pro days. Sometimes they're on the same locale as where the combine is and done in conjunction with it later on. Sometimes they move them around. Los Angeles is one of the hubs for that kind of thing. I know Clutch Sports is one that has had its own pro day out there on the West Coast in recent years. That's just kind of how this landscape looks once you're in it. And remember, the deadline to withdraw from the NBA draft, if you have college eligibility to return to college, is May 28th. So here we are. We're just now in the first few days of the combine, a little more than 2 weeks away from that deadline. And things are about to get busy for a lot of these guys. Now, there were 75 players invited to the NBA Draft Combine. Another 5 were brought up from the G League Elite Camp. We told you that would happen, about a handful. Nellie Davis, who took part in the G League Elite Camp, was not invited up to the Combine. 5 players were. An SEC name worth mentioning, backcourt player Tamar Bates from Missouri was one of the G League Elite Camp players that was invited up to the Combine. But not Nellie Davis. You look at Nellie Davis statistically in a couple of scrimmages. The G League Elite Camp was only a couple of days, basically 3 days. He had a poor performance shooting-wise in one of those games, 1 of 9 from the field, 1 of 2 at the foul line. He did have 4 rebounds and 4 assists. The last game he played in, he had 10 points, was 4 of 6. Shooting from the field, had a little bit, obviously a better shooting day. Didn't put up as other, as good as stats elsewhere, rebounding, assists, that like he did in game 1. But he's a guy, again, a lot of these players, whether you're invited up to the draft combine or not, they're just trying to show enough to get invited on a summer league roster, which will play out in July, right? Work themselves into potential to, get a 2-way contract or one of those non-guaranteed 1-year deals, Exhibit 10, some of those things. Even make their way into the G League if they can't get one of those things and just be a G League player. There are going to be opportunities for Nellie Davis to do those kinds of things. Even if, latching on and getting a deal with an NBA team, if it seems far-fetched right now, it's really not that far out of things that happened for guys like Daryl Macon and Stanley Amude, Mason Jones. So you go down the list of undrafted Hogs that got 2-way deals, played in NBA games, things of that nature. Nellie Davis has a chance there. I think it's interesting to do Thero's not competing. Again, the knee injury. One of the NBA scouts I asked about that was probably responding to my question before, but I was already on here to talk a little bit about that. Again, two of the scouts that I've recently referenced their intel with me regarding the Arkansas players are already there. They'll be there all week. So all of this again will be fascinating as it plays out. Now I'll be on the road tomorrow to Oklahoma City. I'll be covering the Oklahoma City Thunder Denver Nuggets Game 5 tilt Western Conference semifinals series tied up 2-apiece. It's been great theater, close games for the most part. One blowout win for Oklahoma City in Game 2 on its home court. Now the Thunder are back, so I'll be covering that as a media credentialed reporting on site from that game. We'll be getting back in the wee hours of the morning, probably to Little Rock, because on Wednesday, I talk about this busy week. Wednesday, so a couple of days from today, Calipari will be in Central Arkansas. He's part of the Arkansas's One Road Show thing where they go around with Hunter Yurachek, some of the head coaches, and Calipari will be in Little Rock for the second time since last year when he first took the job, when he came and made an appearance and spoke to fans as part of that road show. He'll do it again this year, and so that's Wednesday afternoon. So he'll be in the Little Rock area, which I find very interesting to do that. We'll have a media scrum availability with him. So I'll be asking him questions about the roster, things like that during that, and then seeing what he says to fans. There's always good stuff coming from Calipari when he speaks. That's on Wednesday. Then on Thursday, in-state class of 2026, national top 25, according to ESPN, the 26th ranked player, Jashawn J.J. Andrews, 6'6" wing out of Little Rock Christian Academy, will be making his college choice. It's down to Arkansas, LSU, Missouri. So that goes down. So it's interesting. Calipari's in Little Rock on Wednesday. That's shaken out on Thursday. And then, Friday is the beginning of the first live evaluation period for Division I coaches to go out and watch in person high school players. And Calipari, as part of that one road show, that Razorback road show, will be in the Memphis area at the end of the week speaking to Razorback fans. And the Nike EYBL session, as it would play out, begins Friday through Sunday, the 16th to the 18th. Again, Division I coaches allowed to be there. The Nike EYBL session is in Memphis. So Calipari has strategically put himself in important areas as the week moves on. It's going to be very busy for him. The rest of the coaches on that staff will be out recruiting, as they won't just be at the Nike EYBL session. They'll be at Adidas in Council Bluffs, Iowa. They'll be in Wichita for the Next Pro 16 event. They'll be wherever Under Armour is, the Under Armour Association event to watch players and prospects, looking at classes of 2026, 2027. So this will be a very busy week. And again, it's slow right now when you're talking having to wait things out on, does Carter Knox come back? But even that's busy because we're going to see for ourselves how he does. What are his measurables like? They're going to height in shoes, out of shoes, hand width, hand length, wingspan, standing reach, vert max, all the shuttle and testing stuff when you're looking at agility and speed and athleticism. They're going to go through all that. There's shooting drills where they're combining mid-range shooting and three-point shooting. Different things they'll go through there. Again, the 5-on-5 competition. Knox and Boogie Fland have signed up for that, and do Thero not. So we'll see, what that really means. Does Thero feel good enough about where he is? Does he have a guarantee already? And they don't want him out there on that knee. I mean, that's possible. It's also possible because of the knee situation that he doesn't want to push that and go out and look bad. Maybe he feels good enough, maybe without a guarantee, talking with certain teams, that he's probably going to be okay if he doesn't compete. There's more than one way to look at it. He could be doing what a lot of agents do. They put their players in these pro day workouts where there is a strict menu of things that they'll only do, and there's not really mano-a-mano competition. It's more like drill work, and they can set those things up to, basically drive a narrative or control the setting, that kind of thing. So those are the things you see every year when it's this time of year. Nothing new there, but it's always fascinating. And I think if Adu Thero were healthy, completely healthy, not that he's not completely healthy, but not having a recent lower leg injury, put it that way, to contend with, he would be competing, because he's a competitor. He's a fierce competitor. He doesn't mind measuring himself that way. And so I think that's just, one of those things where because of that, that's what we're seeing there. And then we'll get the feedback. Like I said, I've gotten some feedback already from one of the draft scouts that came over while we started this, and I couldn't read that. So I'm interested to get back to that. I may add it to the comments afterward, what he told me, because I'm fascinated by the whole process. All right, so you've got the combine, you had the G League Elite Camp, you've got recruiting through the week because you've got a player that's going to make an announcement. It really is good stuff. Yeah, do Thero, that's who I'm talking about. Thero's not going to take part in the 5-on-5 scrimmaging, and so the rosters were released. He's been left off. Now, is there a chance he could have a change of heart and add himself to the roster? That's possible. Those things have actually happened in the past. So, I guess you'd leave that out as a possibility. Does Cal have something up his sleeve as far as a late addition? I mean, we'll see. He said in that retention video that Arkansas wasn't done yet. Then they pumped the brakes on everything that came out, and have told me basically from that staff, they're not looking to add a splash kind of player. Obviously, those calculations change if Carter Knox doesn't come back. You would think then they would definitely be in a sweepstakes for a guy like Jameer Watkins. Could they be just completely pumping the brakes and trying to be radio silent until the combine and that May 28th deadline rolls past? That's about the same time, by the way, that May 28th deadline to get out of the draft, if you're coming back to college, that players will be on campus already. Your team will already be on campus. They'll be enrolled in starting summer session 1, the 27th. That's the day after Memorial Day, which is a Monday. Everybody's off, right? School's out. That's on the 26th. And so all these dates seem to indicate that maybe they're just really trying to keep it low profile, not acknowledge anything, and just wait till some of that stuff gets played out and they get their team on campus. Mika Miernan, someone's asking here about that. It's another one Arkansas continues to recruit. The scuttlebutt's been behind the scenes. He may be one of the most likely in that class of 2026 to go ahead if he gets the right NIL deal and reclass. And then you might have a guy on your hands that you can have for 2 years. You might have a player that you can plan on for 2 years. And for Arkansas, he'd fill a position of need on this next roster. Certainly on that front line as a backup to Trevor Brazile and cutting his teeth coming off the bench behind a guy that's approved. Honestly, the way Brazile played in the last quarter of the season, the last 9 games, you understand why Arkansas prioritized him as a retention piece. And a guy like Mika Miernan could stretch the floor, protect the rim, brings you height, length, and athleticism, would be a nice fit as a year 1 guy. Again, you're not putting too much on him to back up Trevor Brazile. So someone asking about that, maybe there's a pathway for that. Arkansas is going to be watching. I've been reporting in the last week or so all the upcoming visitors for the Razorbacks from the 2026 class, a lot of high-level 5-stars. Now, they haven't released dates yet. One has said they're going to visit after Peach Jam, which is in July, so no specific dates, but that's expected. That's how these things play out. But just to hear players tell me when I interviewed them down at the Adidas event weekend before last in Bryan, Texas, and some of the national reporting and source stuff that I got, at least a handful, 5 to 6 players plan to visit Arkansas. They're all 5-stars in that 2026 class. Mika Miernan has already visited Arkansas, and if he reclasses to 2025, that's a little bit different dynamic. J.J. Andrews' class of 2026, it very well could be that Calipari has his first commitment, first pledge, come Thursday for the 2026 class. It is 3rd recruiting cycle officially at Arkansas. That'd be a great start to it with a lot of visits upcoming. That's why the week is so important, because this weekend, whether it's Nike, EYBL, it seems clear to me Calipari is going to begin there because he's speaking to Razorback fans in Memphis at the end of the week, is kind of closing out that roadshow event that's week-long, starts today. It's pretty clear he's put himself in Memphis in the 901 so that he can start the weekend off there at that live eval session on Friday. Arkansas is going to really put their eyes on a lot of these players that intend to visit the Razorbacks later, and that's going to help cement and prioritize guys what they see, this weekend. A lot of these players, they already have their sights set on, or the weekend's not going to impact necessarily a whole lot, but for some it will. For some of those players it will. So again, I say busy week. There's a lot that could go down in a positive way for Arkansas this week. You hate to root against Carter Knox having a great combine. I'm one of those that hopes he does. And if it's meant to be for him to go in the NBA draft this year, so be it. But a lot of things will start to maybe shake out starting this week and moving through again the end of the month when you're moving players in. It's busy time. And again, this is the busiest week since the end of the season. It just is, period. I know Arkansas added a couple of big men out of the portal, had those visitors in, bookend day one was in one day, the other one came in the day after, or 2 days later. And their commitment announcements were on the same day. But other than that, this is really the busiest stretch so far for Arkansas when you look at it recruiting wise. And that again goes back to finishing up, solidifying this 2025-26 roster, looking ahead to 2026 and the next recruiting cycle, things of that nature. And of course, you want your brand, whoever's going to stay in the draft, you want it to continue to show a strong brand, not only for Calipari, but for Arkansas. You want to see guys have success. You hope if they stay in, they're going to be first rounders or get a really nice deal as an early second round pick, get some kind of guarantee. Go ahead and get in that NBA game process. It just helps continue the snowball. So this week connects. I mean, again, Pro Hogs, I'll be being in Oklahoma City tomorrow. You've got guys that played for Cal at Kentucky, SGA, who's probably going to be the league MVP, Cason Wallace, Jamal Murray over on Denver's team that was a star. He and Isaiah Joe, who plays for Oklahoma City, they tied. They share the record for most three-pointers made by a freshman in the SEC. I mean, there's so many things. Jalen Williams, who's having a great series, really giving the Joker fits when he guards him. I mean, the Joker's like he's shooting in the 30%, mid-30s when Jalen Williams is guarding him. He's having a good series in his limited minutes. I mean, this is a hell of a series. It's got all kinds of Calipari and Arkansas ties. Calipari goes to a lot of these games in Oklahoma City because it's easy to get to. He's got a really busy week with what we just talked about. But let's see if he's also in Oklahoma City tomorrow. I wouldn't put it past him to sneak that in because I don't know that he's doing road shows personally the first couple of days. I know he's coming to Little Rock Wednesday, and I know, again, Memphis later in the week. So we'll see about that. But all of this stuff blends together when you look at marketing your brand, recruiting, all of it. It's really important. So I'm so looking forward to this week. I really just can't wait for it. Again, the plan is I'll be in Memphis for the entire weekend. I've already got my media credentials through Nike EYBL approved for that event. Again, the Oklahoma City Denver game 5 tomorrow. With Oklahoma City now, after coming off yesterday's big win on the road to even that series, back to having home court advantage, which hasn't meant a lot, to be honest, in these NBA playoffs, especially when you look at the 8 teams that are left in the 2 semifinal games in each of the conferences. I mean, Boston, New York, a home team hasn't won yet. New York leads the series 2-1 in game 4, and back in the Big Apple, I mean, Boston can even the series up. Cleveland's getting slapped around by Indiana right now. Indiana was the first home team to win in that series, and that happened in the last game that they played. So up 3-1, it was 2-1, and the road team had won every game to that point. So it's just one of those things where that's just how these playoffs are going down. So we'll see what happens in Oklahoma City. But you're certainly rooting for the Pro Hogs. Again, I mentioned Jalen Williams' defense. It has really stood out. And I think part of that is, I mentioned this on my segment yesterday on Pig Trail Nation. He's sort of a poor man's Joker, right? He's a very cerebral, great passing big man, can knock down shots out there, after those dribble handoff situations where he rolls out, pops out off of those screens and gets a pass back. So he's not as good as Joker, but he thinks like the Joker because he's just a high IQ big man in terms of the soft hands, passing, all of the soft skills. And so he knows the tendencies. He got some good deflections too when Joker tried to pass off his defense, just anticipating what he was going to do. Part of that's the scouting report, but also it's having that mind. He's got a similar kind of mind in the way that he plays. So it's a fascinating matchup, and we'll see where that goes. But getting back, as we wrap things up now, 25 minutes in, not a whole lot more, not much more time I want to spend on this, other than I will say I want to repeat what I've said before about J.J. Andrews. Being a potential legacy because of his dad being a Razorback great from in-state, from Camden, and a football great, All-American, first-team All-American, an all-pro at the next level, being an in-state kid, remains in state, right? Little Rock Christian Academy. The fact that it's John Calipari, everything heavily leans for Arkansas here. He's doing it during a public ceremony at his school. That rarely goes down when a kid's being pursued and prioritized by Arkansas, where they don't commit to Arkansas. There is precedent, though. The last one I mentioned, Chris Moore in 2020 had a ceremony at West Memphis High School where he attended and picked Auburn, and Arkansas, wanted him. So it can happen. But everything lines up in favor of Arkansas. But in this NIL era, I remind everybody, if either LSU or Missouri is showing him more priority, more money, which will correlate with a bigger role as a freshman and being a guy, maybe they're promising to build around him or he's their feature guy. Those are the kind of things that can upend this landing for Arkansas. And we saw it with Mohamed Silla, where Georgia Tech raised the ante in the final hours and peeled him away. Now, this is different in a sense because I think there's more of a priority here for Arkansas with him, and the staff feels like they have. But there are going to be limits. There always are with every player with Calipari. It's proven that so far in every recruiting cycle, the two that he's had since he's been here. And this would be the third one. And so I don't see why they would jump overboard to win something if it's outside of what they believe makes sense. And if one of these other schools is willing to do it, I just say keep an eye out on the possibility of an upset here. Otherwise, I think it's Arkansas. We've been talking about Terrion Burgess, class of 2025. The possibility, and I've confirmed it from both sides, the possibility of him being a Razorback existed here late. The issue here is what that would look like and what real opportunities he has at other places, whether it's mid-major, maybe even a high major or two, where he'll have a definitive role in year one and a path to really be a contributor in year one. Whereas Arkansas may be more of a developmental emergency back end kind of thing. We've talked about it. But the longer this goes without an announcement, because coming from his camp, I was told it could have been as soon as Friday before last, or maybe sometime this past week, and it didn't happen. And I've always said it. I felt like it would be against what I've heard forever from his camp is they don't want to go somewhere where they're not going to have an immediate opportunity. That doesn't mean they can't change their mind about that. It doesn't mean because I know that family loves the Razorbacks, if that's not maybe enough of an enticement just based on that to come on board and see how it goes for a year and then make decisions after that. Either way, we'll see, if something comes out this week. But I know this, again, it's not like Arkansas that's moving new team onto campus at the end of the month. It's most schools. And so you don't want to be behind in that scenario, especially coming out of high school and you're not a portal edition. So something will be announced, I'm sure, fairly soon, whether it's Arkansas or some other opportunity where it makes more sense for him to play sooner and have a role sooner. That's what this is always going to be about. I've said that every time, but we're still keeping our eyes on it. All right, 28 minutes in. I'm going to sign off before we hit 30. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. We'll be reporting all week on what I consider, again, as we cap this off, the busiest week for Arkansas's players, coaching staff, or players you hope will come back and be, in the case of Carter Knox, maybe there's a chance out, a 1% chance with an Adu Thero. Boogie Fland, I don't think there is a path back, but either way, you're watching all of this stuff, the recruiting, the first live eval. We're going to have top-notch coverage throughout the week on all of it, including highlight videos, interviews, results, stats. You know how I do it. You know how I roll, so you won't get it anywhere else. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I appreciate all of you. Please hit subscribe, like, and share. If you haven't done it already, please do hit that subscribe button. I'm Kevin McPherson. Take care of yourselves. Until next time, and if something breaks, we'll come back on today or any day. Might be back on tomorrow before I go drive up to Oklahoma City. But until next time, thanks for being here. See you then.